And now we have Miss D'Amica Breedlove on the line. Breedlove Mays, are you here?
Yes, good morning, Tangela. How are you?
Good morning, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on. I've been listening in. You've been having an interesting conversation this morning, and I am honored to be a part of this conversation and honored to be here on WMBM.
Well, we're honored to have you. For you all that don't know, Miss D'Amica Breedlove, she was a student at Miami Northwestern. She became a teacher at Miami Northwestern. In fact, she was my son teacher at Miami Northwestern. I knew her as a teacher during that time, but later on, a few years later, D'Amica became Teacher of the Year, and she made it to the State Teacher of the Year. And I was able to walk with her and advise her through some of the political things that she had to deal with. But I'm here today because she's now an author. She lives in Atlanta now, and she's now an author. And I want to talk about the book. The book, What Made You Create Black Lives, Lines and Lyrics, a book of poetry. And in the book, I want to thank you publicly because there was a poem dedicated to my son. There was a quote I noticed that came from me as I was out there speaking, and I always stand by all my quotes, so I was so happy to see it. But I want to ask you first, as a kid that grew up in Liberty City, what is it that made you move forward in writing and completing this book? Because I know when it comes to doing a book, it's an off and on thing. Is a should I do it, shouldn't I do it? But what is it that made you move forward as a little girl from Liberty City? What did you see to say, I have to create this book to make sure people are educated?
Ever since I saw what happened with Trayvon Martin, and then him being from Miami, and other incidents of racial violence and the 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 brutality that we were experiencing in Miami-Dade and across the country. This kind of poetry, or this topic for poetry, has always been on my mind. You know, as a little girl, I've watched male family members in my family get arrested, get harassed by the police officers. You touched on violence in our own community. That's not what this book is about, but I've also experienced and witnessed that. And then even as a young black female, when I first began to drive on my own, I had been stopped several times. Not only, in Miami-Dade, but as a student driving from Miami-Dade to Tallahassee to attend FAMU. Those road trips were often very scary. Getting stopped by state troopers, having my seats removed from my vehicle because supposedly I was transporting drugs and they didn't believe that I was a college student. All of these kinds of experiences informed my decision to write the book. But as you say, you go back and forth about it, and one of the reasons why I went back and forth about it is because because I am an educator, and as an educator, we are often scrutinized for what we communicate and how we communicate. But because I, no longer work for a specific system and I support school systems, I felt that I could communicate some of the concerns and the experiences that we are having in our community, that my students are having, that my colleagues are having, my family members are having, without the backlash that if I were in the system, I would definitely receive.
I want to ask you, I just want to go, I've been reading some of your book, and I just want to go into some of the parts. Like one of the parts where you say, a season of protest, we won't stick to sports.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
What,
Well,
what were you thinking when you wrote that?
go ahead. What's your question?
No, no. What were you thinking when you wrote that, and what's your message that you're driving home
Well,
with
my
that?
message is just what I said about about being an educator. We're often muted. We aren't permitted to speak about the discrimination that is occurring in our schools, the brutality that our students experience without seeming that we're angry or that we are stepping out of line. And I saw the same thing happening with athletes, and it was just a repetitive a message that was being sent all the way from the White House when Trump was president to certain ESPN reporters, and then those leaders of the GOP who were criticizing athletes who were taking a stand against the injustices that were happening to black people. And so I wanted to write about that, and I wanted to let these athletes know that it is okay, that actually it's your responsibility, to speak out about these things, to stand for something. And I wanted it to be from a modern and a historical perspective, so that as young people read the poem, they would learn about where these young athletes who inspire these young athletes. So, including Muhammad Ali, Jim Brown, the Olympians, from the '60s and so forth. In this poem, as well as the athletes of our age, Colin Kaepernick, LeBron James, Naomi, and all of the others, so that years from now, young people who are reading this book will know about those who were involved in sports activism and kind of have a history of sports activism, where it started and where it is today.
And then as we go into part two, you talk about America's Child.
I think that was the one about Tamir Rice, and it's not just about him; it was dedicated to him. But you spoke about a young man who was put in the chokehold with the police chief that you just had on, and our young boys and girls are not seen as young boys and girls. They are criminalized. They are seen as adults. They are seen as less than human. And so when our children are brutalized or murdered, there's always a question about whether they deserved it or not. Instead of putting a responsibility on police officers to uphold the law, to do their duty, and to use common sense when they are, dealing with not only children but adults. But in this particular case, it was a metaphor because we are all America's children, but we are often treated like the stepchildren. We are often treated like the black sheep of the family, and so we are not protected by America. We are not protected by America or her her institutions. And so Tamir Rice's experience, his death, was an opportunity to speak on that through a metaphor, through an extended metaphor of sorts, and just remind people that black children are children, and they deserve to be protected, and those who violate their rights and their lives, including police officers, need to be held accountable.
Okay, I'm going to end with this one before we give information out about your book and how people can get your book. Part three, and of course, this got me street politics, squad up.
Now, that was all, let me tell you, it really started with you. You talked about our relationship, our history. You have, definitely inspired me most of my professional life, but also as a mother and as a community activist. and you are definitely hold no bar type of community activist. You know, you are very transparent, very honest, and I wanted to pay homage to you and to other individuals like you who I have been following, especially since maybe about 2010, 2012. As these incidents of, police violence and racial violence continue to rise, there were different community activists who used social media to basically convey their message and to chronicle their actions in the community. But in particular, I had we have some that have emerged, at the national government level, such as the Squad, who I'm very impressed by. And then here in Georgia with Stacey Abrams, and then we have a couple of mayors as well who have impressed me. So this poem was in dedication to all of your collective work, and just to again provide young people with, I guess, a sort of narrative of the kind of work that you all do, and that this kind of work is just as cool as, being a hip hop artist or being an athlete. And so I didn't want to write about it in the traditional poetic form, but rap is rhythm and poetry, and so I wanted to write it as a homage to hip hop and as a homage to you all as well.
I really appreciate that. As we get ready to close, what I want to do is I want to bring you back on, and I want to dive into some of these subjects because it's important to our community and what we're dealing with. But as we close, I just want you to give information to people how they can get a copy of your book.
Absolutely. Right now, you can get the ebook on any platform, including Amazon. The paperback is available on Amazon, and the paper and hardbacks will be available in 2 weeks on the shelves and bookstores across the nation and globally as well. But right now, the paperbacks and the ebooks are available through Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, iBooks, and other digital bookstores as well. But thank you so much for having me on, Tangela. I hope everyone will support the book and follow me on social media at author DB Mays, and just let me know your thoughts about the book.
Thank you so much. And again, put me back on the calendar because I want to bring you back so we can dive in some of these subjects because there's so many and we need some time to really talk about those things.
Absolutely. Anything for you. Call me anytime. I'll be more than happy to come on.
Thank you. Love you, Mika. And I'll talk
Oh,
with you soon.
love you too. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
You do the same. And I want to thank everyone for listening to WMBM this morning. I hope that we was able to educate you on some things, encourage you on some things, and hopefully you'll get involved and be safe, please. Even if you're vaccinated, please be safe. Thank you. Have a great day.